So the last time I got to talk about one half of the OG Wicked duo, I got to discuss a musical about trees. This is not a musical about trees. So this is one of those How the Internet episodes where the heel turn comes relatively quickly, and it's even more interesting because not only did it happen due to poor reception to a piece of art that the subject is involved in, and a personal controversy, but those elements also sort of mirror each other in a very unique way. Poetic, really. Let's get into it.
Like when it comes to popular, I know about popular.
If you're watching this video, you probably already know who Kristin Chenoweth is because you're gay. Just kidding. But she is one of the more well-known voices in the theater community, most notably recognized for originating the role of Glinda the Good Witch alongside Idina Menzel in the first ever Broadway production of Wicked. And I guess I never paid attention to Kristin Chenoweth's politics until now because 1, I've never had a reason to, and 2, I just assumed that everyone who's had an extended bit part on Glee is an Obama-era neoliberal. But for what it's worth, she's previously described herself as a liberal Christian, has always been pro-gay, and even endorsed Hillary Clinton back in 2016. Why is this relevant, you ask? Well,
I'm sorry if emotion gets involved here. Forgive me.
Please.
I saw what happened online with my own eyes, and I had a human moment of reflection just right then. I came to understand that my comment hurt some folks. And that hurt me so bad. I would never.
So I'm playing things a bit out of order for dramatic effect, but that is Kristin's emotional response to backlash that she received a few months ago following the assassination of right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk. You see what I mean by a quick heel turn? You see, after the news broke about Kirk's death, who was a man who harbored a lot of negative and threatening opinions toward groups who have championed Kristin Chenoweth's career over the years, such as women and gay folks, Kristin expressed her grief over the situation on social media, as many other celebrities preemptively did, saying, quote, "I'm so upset. Didn't always agree, but appreciated some perspectives. What a heartbreak. His young family. I know where he is now. Heaven. But still." Now, Kristin was not the first or only celebrity to do this sort of thing when this situation happened. We did a whole episode about Jamie Lee Curtis around the time that this occurred, getting backlash for saying something similar. But I think a lot of people's knowledge of the situation just stopped with this, and because of that, I think it can be interpreted as more ambiguous, just expressing generalized grief for the shocking and sudden public death of another human being, and clearly based on her response, I'm sure that's how she would like the situation to be interpreted as well. The problem here, though, is that if you're willing to take that part of it in good faith, she actually doubled down in a comment response to Selma Blair. So in this screenshot you can see, Selma said, "This incredible man, who would go into the cauldron of indoctrination and use logic to have dialogue. I am sick for his family, for all of us." And there's Kristin replying, "What you said, Selma." Like, maybe you can be charitable about her original comment because a lot of celebrities feel this incessant need to comment on everything without thinking about what they're saying first, but this one, I don't know. The cauldron of indoctrination, meaning what, liberal college campuses? That's pretty pointed, and here's Kristin Chenoweth openly agreeing with it. I also find her response to this backlash, as many others did, to be this sort of flailing, feel-bad-for-me shtick that is not really reflective or understanding of what people are actually upset about here. She's just overwhelmed by the backlash itself. Now you might be wondering why we're talking about the Charlie Kirk situation now if it happened a few months ago. Well, Kristin Chenoweth is in the headlines again now because she is starring in a new musical that opened in November. And it's closing in January. The Queen of Versailles is a new original musical composed by Stephen Schwartz, who is known for a lot of things, Wicked being one of them. The show is based on a documentary of the same name that follows Florida socialite Jackie Siegel and her husband David Siegel, the CEO of Westgate Resorts, a predatory timeshare company. The Siegels were one of those tabloidy reality TV gawk magnates back in the day, mainly because they were using their extravagant wealth to replicate the Palace of Versailles in Orlando, Florida, aka what would have been the largest private home in the US, and if you're wondering, the home is technically still under construction. The documentary follows the construction of the home all the way through the 2008 financial crisis, but it's an interesting look at the wealth gap in American culture, which is still now prominently the story of our time, even more so, I would argue. The musical, however, maybe the most cursed production in recent memory. Quick side tangent here, this musical actually opened at the Emerson Colonial Theater in Boston, and that is a theater on the campus of Emerson College. And by campus, I mean a city block. I know that because I went to school there. When I was at school there, back in like 2017, the Colonial Theater was still under construction. However, it is attached to the Colonial Dorm Building. And so one day, my friend who lived in the Colonial Dorm Building discovered that in the mailroom there was a little door that led into the Colonial Theater. And at the time, the theater was still under construction. So my friends and I decided to go in there in the middle of the night because they left the door open, and then we set an alarm off and had to run away before campus security found out that we were trespassing. And then the next day, that little door in the mailroom happened to be permanently locked. So if you've ever seen that door in the Colo mailroom and you're wondering what it leads to and why it's locked, I'm the reason. Sorry about that. Anyway, back then the rumor was that the musical itself needed a lot of help. It was long and felt a bit disjointed, and people largely assumed that because Kristin and Stephen Schwartz were attached to it, the book would get the necessary revisions before the inevitable transfer to Broadway. Not only did that not happen, it seems, but multiple people involved with the production have had various controversies attached to them, Kristin included for the aforementioned Charlie Kirk debacle. But it appears that the production also hired William Ivy Long as a costume consultant, and seemingly went to extensive lengths to not advertise that anywhere because William Ivy Long has been accused of sexual misconduct in multiple incidents between 1996 and 2002. Long has denied these allegations. Additionally, and I did not know this until after I saw the show, but F. Murray Abraham, who plays David Siegel in the production, was also dismissed from the set of Apple TV's Mythic Quest in 2023 for inappropriate behavior on set. And it goes without saying that Broadway as an institution has always had this problem, just like sports and the music scene and the US government have always had this problem. Whether we know it or we don't, everyone with power is hiring their friends, and those people with power don't believe in consequences and think that everyone, yes, everyone, deserves a second chance. Tale as old as time, and not the best optics when your star is already embroiled in a separate controversy and getting accused of being a Republican who wants people to feel bad for her. Speaking of which, this is a show about a Republican who wants people to feel bad for her. So okay, this show got pretty mixed to bad reviews in Boston, and it's clear that when they moved the show to New York, they didn't change much. And I guess they maybe tried to salvage what they didn't change, because when this first opened in previews on Broadway in October, there were reports that the original preview runtimes were up to like 4 hours long because they were stopping and starting and changing things, which is expected in a preview, but 4 hours is a lot. And obviously it was very short-lived because it opened in November, it got mixed to bad reviews on Broadway, it was announced that it was closing in January, probably because of the content of the show, maybe arguably also because of the controversy surrounding Kristin Chenoweth and also the rest of the production. And so this weekend, about a half hour before the show started, I purchased a ticket for basically no money to sit all the way up top in the very back row to see this thing for myself. Merry Christmas. I'm like Jesus. Where's my cross? Here's a brief synopsis of both acts, both very long acts. The first act takes us through the documentary crew filming the construction of Orlando Versailles. We learn about Kristin's backstory, Jackie's backstory, sorry, that was a typo in the script, through this almost fourth-breaking wall montage, and we also learn about her staff, her relationship with David, and her family life, mostly her relationship with her daughter Victoria, who is very unlike her in many respects. Jackie is this very appearance-obsessed pageant queen, and Victoria is more unkempt and alternative. The first act ends with Jackie's niece Jonquil moving in, which comes a bit out of nowhere, but I guess it's probably true to Jackie's real life. And then the financial crisis happens, and they put construction on pause and send all of their staff home. Then in the second half, the documentary premieres at Sundance, and Jackie does all these commercial and talk show appearances and becomes a high-profile tabloid freak. This is like the low point for the family that causes Jackie to retreat to her parents' tiny home in upstate New York with her daughter, who realizes that maybe a less luxurious lifestyle is actually a better fit for all of them. Then they go back home to the dysfunction, and David announces that construction is back on because the government bailed out Westgate. So Jackie goes full speed ahead with construction at the expense of Victoria's mental health, and Victoria ends up dying tragically of an overdose. At the end of the show, we see a completed ballroom, this whole elaborate set, and the rest of the house isn't finished, but Jackie sings her final song in it after realizing that her daughter is gone, her niece moved out, her husband doesn't care about her, and she sent all her staff home for the holidays. It's a lot, and it's also nothing. So after watching it, I think what the creative team was trying to go for here was sort of an arc that's similar to Mama Rose and Gypsy, in that when you're watching that musical, you are following the character of Mama Rose, who is driven by this goal to make her children famous and make them stars, and she stops at pretty much nothing to make that happen. It's very relentless. You're following these choices and you're like, I don't really like how this person's acting. Every time I think that they can't get lower, they do. And that's sort of the appeal of it, is seeing how far this character can go, right? And she's doing that at the well-being and expense of everyone involved until everyone leaves her. And then at the end, you're left with the big catharsis song that is Rose's turn, where she is reflecting on all of this. And I think that is what they were trying to do here. All that work, and what did it get me? Why did I do it? Do you guys ever think about that Kurt Hummel Glee cover of Rose's Turn? Because I think about it all the time. This time for me, for me, for me. The problem here is that, one, you actually do learn why Rose is like that in the musical. It's because she never got the opportunity to be in the spotlight herself. But in Jackie's case, in the show, you don't ever really learn her intrinsic motivation to, like, shroud herself in the construction of this house. In the beginning of the show, we get a bit of a glimpse into it because she had an abusive husband before she married David, but then there's a moment where we learn about the abuse, and Jackie, the character, addresses the audience and by extension the documentary crew and goes, can we just skip past this? And then they do. So any chance of learning how to sympathize with her is just lost because the writers don't want to deal with that. The second issue is that while Mama Rose is based on a real character, that story is far away enough in time to be able to explore the nuances of her life and her relationships, whereas the real Jackie Siegel looms quite large over this active production. I mean, she was there opening night handing out McDonald's to people. Not only that, but again, the story of our time here in the US is wealth inequality, and Jackie Siegel is still frivolously highlighting her own hoards of wealth, lighting it on fire, and donating some of it to Donald Trump. I don't think the musical necessarily makes her out to be a good person, but all of her flaws come packaged in jokes and flimsy motivations. You're not supposed to like this character, but you're not supposed to hate her either, even though you probably should. And I do. I do not feel bad that she has no one to share her tacky mansion with at the end. At points, the musical also tries to get a bit more, I don't know, avant-garde, experimental, by pointing back to the French Revolution in certain scenes. Marie Antoinette, Versailles. There's like half-baked commentary in there about the people getting fed up and guillotining the rich, but it feels like it's only really there because there is a Versailles metaphor to be had. There's also something really gross to me about the positioning of the Filipino nanny character, Sophia, an immigrant who never gets to go home to see her family because she's constantly working and taking care of the Siegel's children. And it's like this really emotional moment where she confesses this to the camera crew, and then after she explains this, you're just supposed to go back to following Jackie and her dumb Florida brain shenanigans, and it's just like, the commentary needle was never fully thread, you know what I mean? Additionally, the musical is way too long. None of the music is particularly memorable, except for this one song Victoria and Jonquil do while smoking weed and burying their lizard they killed by not feeding it. But I remember that by virtue of the subject matter more so than the melody or the lyrics, you know what I mean? The only impressive thing about the show is the sets. There are multiple sets, and they look pretty good, which, believe it or not, is not very common on Broadway these days. Most people just stand in front of LED screens. And Kristin, her performance is fine. She sings, and it's fine. She makes quirky jokes, and they're fine. She looks beautiful in a pink sparkly dress, complimented by a Pomeranian. And it's fine. But above all else, I'm just sort of baffled by the choice to participate in something like this, especially compared to Idina Menzel, whose last musical was about a lesbian who climbs trees. Kristin, like Idina, could star in anything that either of them wanted to, and at least Idina took a swing. From a tree. But here's Kristin singing a half-baked attempt at Rose's Turn in a fake mansion with nobody in it, digging deep to find common ground with an out-of-touch socialite whose only accomplishment was marrying a gross old man and taking his timeshare money. And sure, maybe the real Kristin doesn't think she has much in common with Jackie at all. This is her attempt at a late career pivot and playing somebody truly flawed and, to some people, reprehensible, so opposite of who she believes herself to be as a person. And maybe this is an unfair assessment on my part because I don't know Kristin as a person. I don't know any of the celebrities that I have ever mentioned on my show except for my close personal friend Conan O'Brien. But when it comes to the famous people I cover, I only know what they do and what they say. And in a world where the gap between the haves and have-nots is becoming deeper, starring in a musical about a woman with too much have does not sit well for the have-nots who made you what you are. And furthermore, whether or not celebrities have the responsibility to speak up about all of the injustices in the world, the human rights atrocities, the lack of protection for the most vulnerable of us, that's your prerogative. I'm not looking to Instagram posts for my moral compass. But to stay silent on all of that, only to speak up about the death of a podcaster, well, maybe in that instance, it's better to say nothing at all.